My first show was at a venue called the Vault in Buffalo, Minnesota. Um, it was just a little room out in the middle of this little city in Minnesota, but it was packed out. The kids were just awesome. Those people, I mean, have always really been up in just sort of the greater Minnesota area. That has always really been a sort of home base for us. You know, that's where the band sort of started. That was where my first show was. That's where the old vocalist's last show was. So, you know, that place has always been really near to us.
How does playing a metal show compare to being in a folk band or playing folk music like you did starting out?
I love it. I think the thing, as much as I liked folk music or whatever, I'd be sitting down playing the acoustic guitar, and I would be thinking, I'm kind of bored. I can't wait until this set is over, you know. But you know, with shows like this, it's just such a blast. And there's such energy and intensity, you know, that I love it. You know, I can't get enough of it. You know, being on stage and just that aggression that there is on stage is awesome, and it's unlike anything else.
What was the first tour that you did with For Today? The first U.S. tour?
The first tour that I did, we did one called the Mosh Rules Tour, I think. It was sponsored by HM Magazine, and it was with Once Nothing and A Girl, A Gun, A Ghost, and us. I think there was one more band, but I can't remember who they were. But yeah, that was 4.5, almost 5 years ago now.
Are there memories that stick out from that?
Yeah, actually, you know, one in particular, we played a venue in Douglasville, Georgia called the Seven venue on that tour. And we played a smaller sort of side room in that venue, and we all wound up spending the night in the venue that night. And I remember going to sleep in the big room of that place, and I actually went and slept up against the stage that night. And Mike, one of the other guys in our band, he and I both slept in that room, and we were just laying there, just dreaming, like, man, how awesome would it be to get to play in this, you know, this big room? It's enormous, you know. At that time, it was like the biggest venue we'd ever been in, and we were just dreaming about how amazing it would be to be able to play that. And we actually, the second day of this tour, we headlined the big room of that specific venue, and it was sold out. And it was just such a wild sort of full circle thing, you know, that on the first tour I ever did with the band, we dreamed about playing in this room. And, you know, and now we were able to go back to that exact room and see it sold out, you know, full of kids. It was awesome.
When you were there in that Douglasville venue, what were your objectives? You know, what did you see in the future?
For the band or just for that night?
For the band.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. I feel like if I had a plan beyond just what we were doing right now with the band, sometimes I'd be disappointed if it didn't look the way I intended for it to look, if that makes sense. I mean, we're called For Today, you know, so it would be kind of against our mantra for us to plan too far ahead, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are things that I dream about and things that are just sort of what ifs, you know, but I don't think there's any real sort of goals that I have set in stone, these things I want to achieve, you know. It's just, I'm just really along for the ride. I mean, we were recording our first album, and I could never imagine us recording a second or third or fourth album, and yet here we are, you know. So we're just kind of, you know, along for the ride, just taking it one step at a time, one tour at a time.
You mentioned Douglasville. Did you ever listen to bands like Norma Jean or The Chariot?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on them?
I mean, I don't think there's anybody in our scene today that didn't have a copy of Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child in 2004 or whenever. You know, that was the most aggressive, just gnarly, intense album anybody had ever heard at that time. So, you know, I don't know how much of our sound in particular has really been shaped by that, but I know a lot of, you know, as a group, a lot of our band's sort of love for this music was shaped by that. When we were all just high school kids listening to this music, going to shows, we were going to see bands like, you know, like Norma Jean. So, you know, that has always been kind of a part of who we are, you know.
I know Norma Jean, they worked with Ross Robinson on some stuff. Would you ever work with a producer like that? Who did Korn and Limp Bizkit at the drive-in Flash?
I mean, I don't think we have any qualms against doing that. I know everybody in our band just really loves Will Putney, who's produced the album that we have coming up and also our most recent album, Breaker. And I just feel like he so gets who we are as a band that I don't know if I could even imagine going to another producer.
Will Putney also did Straight from the Path's Rising Sun.
Yep.
And you had Drew York guest on Breaker.
Yeah.
Armed for the Masses.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about how you met Drew and the Straight from the Path guys.
We did a tour a years ago with, probably 3 years ago, with Winds of Plague, Despised Icon, For Today, and Stray from the Path. And it was like the first day we met the dudes in Stray and just hit it off with them. And they've been, just as far as guys that we like to hang out with, they've been some of our best friends, for years. So, that was the tour. We actually met them in Tucson, Arizona at a venue called The Rock. That was the first show on that tour. And it was just a blast. We've loved those guys ever since.
How does working with Will Putney compare to working with Jamie King, who's done Between the Buried and Me and other bands like that?
Jamie King, and I think maybe because Jamie King has done so much work with Between the Buried and Me, is pretty hands off in regard to the development process of a song. If we come in and we say, here's how we have the song written, he won't really change much. He'll just kind of record it and make sure that we get what we wanted out of the song, which is good. But Will Putney, and this is where, what I think we love the most about him, he's not afraid to be like, that part sucks, you should take that out. Or this part's awesome, you should figure out a way to bring it back. Or, that part's okay, I think you could do it better. Let's kind of go back and work on it some more. So he's really willing to jump in there, and it's almost like having another band member with us, that has new ideas and is coming at it from a fresh perspective, and that is priceless to have when we're recording.
We were talking about Drew guesting on Breaker. Are there guest appearances for Immortal?
Yes.
What are some of those?
We have Jake Lurs from August Burns Red, Tommy Green from Sleeping Giant, and Sonny Sandoval from POD.
Will there ever be a POD for Today tour since POD is signed with Razor and Tie?
I don't know. Ask POD. I mean, I know we'd love it. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
On the topic of guest appearances, I did an interview with Brian Head-Welsh in 2009, where he spoke in depth about Christianity. Love and Death is a project that he's doing and that you're going to guest on. Yeah.
I actually already recorded the part, and it's awesome. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. So, it's a good song, and Brian has been a good friend of mine for a while. So it's cool to get to work together.
Your family visited him not too long ago. Uncle Head.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep, Uncle Head.
So what does that sound like, Love and Death? Can you give us some insight?
It's heavy, which is wild. Because I would feel like, his stuff would be just more sort of straight up rock, or even more like Korn. But this stuff it's heavy. It's like the band Gideon, A Plea for Purging, like very, very heavy. So it's cool, man. If people like heavy music, they should check it out.
Moving forward on the topic of secular bands, I know you did the All-Stars tour, and there were bands like Amur and Attila. I know Attila's kind of, at least it comes off like they're a party band. What are your thoughts touring with secular bands?
We love it. I mean, it's funny. We have a lot of secular bands, or a lot of bands that don't necessarily share our beliefs, that come up to us and they say, "Man, you guys are just the real deal. You guys really live this," and that speaks loudly to me. So, it's Matthew from My Children, My Bride there.
What's that?
Being a vampire walking through. Okay. We have a lot of bands come up and tell us, you guys are really real, and that speaks loudly to us, and that's awesome. And the cool thing about being on tour with secular bands is they not only get to hear what we say from stage, or they not only get to hear about our reputation, that we pray for kids and we preach about Jesus, but they get to see the way we live. And a lot of times that speaks a lot more loudly to people. So that's something that we love, and we totally invite that, and we're glad to have those bands on tour with us.
I know the band, it formed in Iowa. The other guys, were they ever inspired by Slipknot? Did any of the guys ever sing Heretic Anthem?
I don't know. It's funny. I think most of the guys got into the music scene by listening to softer bands. Like, I know we just recently played with the Early November, and one of our guys, our bassist Brandon, was like freaking out about them. So I think a lot of the guys got in through like the Drive-Thru records. Finch, The Used, Static Lullaby, Haste the Day, some like Screamo. Yeah, the Starting Line. Bands like that weren't necessarily ultra heavy like Slipknot. And I think they got heavier for them, as opposed to starting off heavy with a band like Slipknot or something like that.
Changing the subject a little bit, but we were talking at the beginning of the conversation about tour stories. What's this about pissing in bottles?
It's just, anybody that has ever toured in a van will tell you it's mandatory. you can't avoid it. Sometimes you'll be driving overnight and it'll be 4 in the morning and you'll wake up in the middle of nowhere and there's no gas station and you're just driving and you're in the back of the van and you don't want to yell up and tell them to stop. And so that water bottle you drank before you went to sleep, this soon becomes your best friend.
Unless the bottle's cut,
and yes, which we try to avoid at all costs.
As you're touring around the world, now that you have a wife and you have a 6-month-old son, does it feel harder to tour?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when we tour around the world, it'll only be for a few days at a time. We're going to Europe after this for like 5 days. So, and I think that a large part of that is because four of us are married. Now I have a child, and leaving for just weeks at a time, or even like some people do months at a time. I just don't care enough about touring to be away from my family, because I'm just very much a family man, So even on this tour, we're out for 6 weeks on the Fight the Silence tour right now, and we're taking 1 day off a week, and every day off we have, either I'm flying home to see my family or my family's flying out to see me. So, I'm never gone for weeks at a time. I'm only going to be missing them for a few days at a time.
Are there ever days when you question being in the band, where you question where you're at with your life?
Yeah, but one thing that the Lord really solidified in me a few years ago was this. He said, just keep doing the last thing I told you to do until I tell you to do something else. Which doesn't seem like a really profound concept, but there are times that I could be really frustrated with being on tour, or really hurting being away from home or whatever. And when most people would start thinking I need to go home, I would start thinking, well, the last thing God told me to do is keep touring, so I need to suck it up, do whatever needs to be done, and stay on the road. Continue to be faithful here.